Marc, of course, Marc needs very little introduction, right? Marc, founder, CEO of Salesforce.com, founded in 1999. Currently a company just passed, or will do this year, on the order of $5 billion in revenue, $36 billion market cap, and has really been redefining a large part of enterprise software and enterprise computing for the last 15 years. It is Salesforce's 15th anniversary, so they're marking a very important milestone. They just had an absolutely enormous event in San Francisco, Dreamforce, we were just talking about, was just an absolutely staggering level of people following it. Most of what I want to do today is focus on the future, so those are going to be the majority of the questions, and I know very relevant to this audience. But I want to start by kind of taking a trip back in time to 1999. Which, of course, was not only full in the height of the dot-com bubble, and a lot of companies had real issues, in 2000, 2001, 2002 that followed, but also, at least what I recall, and tell me if you agree with this, what I recall at the time was Salesforce was a particularly heretical idea. And I remember the original, no software icon that you guys had, and it was a very, in a sense, there was a very simple idea at the core, which was if you can go on Amazon and shop by clicking, then you should be able to go on a Salesforce CRM system by clicking in a web browser. And this ought to be a lot easier than all this incredibly elaborate, installed software and integration and all the complete nightmare of things that companies used to deal with, at potentially a fraction of the cost and far greater convenience and so forth and so on. Today, this is a very widely accepted concept, and we'll talk about how widely accepted in a bit. But in 1999, what was it like to come out and say what you said? What kind of reaction do you feel like you got? Or what did it feel like to go through that? And kind of what happened in the first 3, 4, 5, 6 years for the idea to really get traction?
Well, I think that we had been through a really exciting time in the 90s, which you were a huge part of, where we were supposedly going to be going on the information superhighway.
Yes. Which started out as cable television.
Started as cable television, and
grudgingly people said the internet might actually work.
They were wondering, but actually it was not really even part of the conversation, which was interesting, is that you had in the early 90s was really people were kind of getting going with this concept of interactivity. Right. And the big thing at the time was kind of the starting of the Time Warner trials in Florida, okay? And companies like General Magic and these kind of people were kind of building these kind of proprietary devices and proprietary front ends to proprietary back ends. And that was really going to be the big consumer revolution. A lot of the things that were talked about then kind of have come to pass now, right. But in a radically different form. And I think that's kind of the nature of technology, is that you have to kind of be watching for kind of where things are going to go. But when we were certainly in the early 90s working on these things, I was at Oracle working on them. Everybody else you were at the university, you were writing code for Mosaic, right, and these kind of things. So I think when that happened, I think when we got into 1994, 93, and then we saw that emerge, then it was clear, crystal clear, by 95 that interactive TV was dead, right. And that the future was going to be the browser and the web, and that's where we are today. And that then when we started to hear in the mid-90s about network computers, we have that now.
Yes, we do. Yep.
So it's all come to pass, just in a completely different form factor than we expected.
Yeah. So 99. When did you guys launch? When did you get the first customer signed up for Salesforce.com?
We had the first customer signed up within 3 months of starting the service. We started the company in March of 99, right. And by August of 99, we were live and going.
Right. So it was, at least what I remember, like I said, it was so radical. Like, what were the things that caused the first customers to adopt? How did you get them over the hump?
It was just a complete waterfall. And when I look back now at the amount of traction that we had, of course I had never done a startup quite like that before. All of the kind of early indicators that it was going to be a success from the start were there. Mm-hmm. We had I was still at Oracle. I was at Oracle until July of 99. So even though I started the company, I was working on the company in the morning. I rented the apartment next to my home on Telegraph Hill. I would still have to do my day job, and then I'd come back and work on the company.
Yeah.
And then in June of '99, I walked into Larry's office as my boss, and I'm saying, well, here's where we are, and here's what's going on, and whatever. And he's like, I really think you should just take 6 months off and just focus on this full time, because this is going, I think better than anybody could have expected. And I had a really good conversation with Don Clark at the Wall Street Journal, and he wrote a article, front page story, called "Software Goes Online." And at the end of it, he featured Salesforce.com. The next day, we didn't even have really a website up or anything. That night, I was with the guys just saying, let's just get a website up so we can get leads. We had more leads than we could call back. And we, at that point, were only 6 employees.
Yeah.
So we were just going.
Yeah.
And the funny part was, in terms of, venture capital and the nature of venture capital, no venture capitalist would give us money. Yeah. We raised all the money privately. I was thrown out of, Sequoia 3 times, U.S. venture capital 3 times.
What did they say?
Kleiner Perkins, this is never going to work. This doesn't make sense. Yeah. What you're saying will never happen. This cannot come to pass.
And this was in the height of '99, so they were funding, I believe, at that point.
Oh, everything. It wasn't '99. It was '99.
You may have been the only founder who actually had that experience in 1999.
They all remember it crystal clear, too.
Oh, I'm sure they do. Yeah.
They all, 99, 2000, 2001. Yeah. And that's why when entrepreneurs come to me and they'll be like, and I'll be like, why even go into venture capitalists? You should just raise money privately. Unless, someone like yourself actually adds value because, you're an entrepreneur, but and this is just your entrepreneurial pursuit, but most of them aren't going to give you any value anyway. So it was kind of an amazing experience at the beginning. Yeah. And then by 2000, it was just a runaway train. Okay.
So then 2001, the credit.com crash, stock market cracks. 2001, stock market cracks further. Obviously 9/11. 2002, 2003, 2004, economy gets terrible. Many companies founded around the same time as you were in dire straits. Even very high quality companies were having real trouble. Did you guys go through a difficult period through there, or were you?
We did. We went through a really difficult period because we lost a lot of customers who hit the skids. Right. So in 2001, we suffered. We had not put the business practices in place that we have now that kind of give us a buffer on attrition. We just were suffering massive attrition. Right. Companies were just cutting. Right. And when companies were cutting, they were just cutting our product. They were cutting their users, and it was just really, it was really the beginning of understanding what the subscription model was. Right. That there was going to be a good part of the subscription model, there was going to be a bad part of the subscription model, and that we would have to have business practices that would be able to handle both aspects.
And the bad part was churn.
The bad part is, no, that's not the bad part. The bad part is that if you are not thinking about how you're signing up the customer. Right. So when you're signing the customer, if you're just signing them month to month, it doesn't work. Okay. You've got to sign them for 1 or 2 or 3 years at a time. Right. And also that was an incredible part of the cash flow too, because companies would, sign up for a couple years at a time, and then that was really a turning point. We realized that would be a key differential in making that happen. Now, if you think about it, customers were already used to doing that with the larger software companies, so it wasn't a big shift. And when we made that shift, then that next month we were cash flow positive, and we've never looked back on that.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, let's talk about the future. And I would love maybe if you could give us kind of your quick kind of state of the world. Like, what's the state of the world with software as a service and with cloud today? Like, what's working, what's not working, what remains to be done?
Well, I mean, there's never been a more exciting time in the history of technology, and the number of things that are all happening at once is it's mind-bending. And even if you're a really smart person and you are really great at technology and really aware of everything that's going on, no matter what, it's overwhelming. we've never had this many things all happening at once.
Even in the 90s, even in late 90s?
Period.
No comparison.
There's no comparison. Yeah. You've never had this many kind of converging trends. And because of that, that's why you have a rate of innovation in the world that is just phenomenal. And why we have so many technologies that are coming out of the box really for the first time in such an exciting way. We could go through them one by one by one. It could be the cloud. It could be social networks, it could be mobility, it could be connected products, it could be data science and its relationship with artificial intelligence, deep learning. I mean, it just goes, it's a wave, robotics, and all these things are converging very rapidly, and that's what's exciting. That's the huge opportunity for companies in our industry, and why thousands of new companies have formed, within a mile or two of this building.
Yeah. So what are the big things you think, especially in software as a service, what are the big things that will happen in the next 3 years that haven't happened yet? Like, what has yet to tip? Kinds of customers, kinds of applications, kinds of data?
Well, I think the number one thing that is happening, which is really, I think you have to kind of look back to your comments last year, where you said there's going to be 5 billion of these things. And that is huge. These devices are more exciting, more powerful, easier to use, lower cost than ever before. Yet the amount of software really that runs on these things for enterprise is relatively constrained. And we've been working really hard now for about 3 years on a project called Salesforce One, which is to build a platform that would take all of our customers' existing apps, metadata, code, and give them the ability to just instantly run right on this device. That's been a massive effort, because I really believe that if you're not on here, if this isn't your dominant platform, you're really in trouble. Now, you of course know that from your consumer side with Facebook, but in the enterprise side, if you look at traditional enterprise companies, they don't have that religion that Mark Zuckerberg has. Okay, Mark Zuckerberg has the mobile religion. Okay, you don't have that with the enterprise CEOs. And I've really felt that fever for 36 months. And so I've really just had our people just, on it. And today, if I'm on my device, I can get all of everything we do is here. And when we just launched a new analytics platform, you know about that. We've talked about that for a year or more. It's all mobile first. So that when I'm right here, like, I can get at zillions of amounts of data with a compelling user interface that's all mobile first, with a multi-tenant back end, and it's all connected to a social platform, and it's the only one that's really out there in terms of being that way for the enterprise. And that's because if you look at, and analytics is a really good category to look at, a lot of these trends have happened, let's say a lot of these platforms emerged trends have happened in the last 5 years. There haven't been any new analytics platforms really written from the ground up in the last 5 years. So when we went to write that platform, what we end up with is just something so dramatically different than any other piece of software that I've ever seen. And then it just amplifies to me, everything has to be rewritten. And we're still at the beginning of that. It's not just about the cloud, it's about this.
So it's not just a web browser on a mobile device, it's a whole...
It's not just it can't be. If it's a web browser on a mobile device, users are not going to use your product. They expect it to be as good as the best of the consumer apps.
And are you finding the customers are ready to go? Like, there has been, as you said, there's been kind of this big gap. A lot of CIOs have been, fairly resistant to the idea of opening up access mobile devices. People bring them from home, they get viral,
Well, obviously, I haven't found that to be true. We've looked at our business results. But I think Dreamforce is a good example. You came to Dreamforce 2 weeks ago. Dreamforce is now, it's not just our user conference, it's the largest conference in tech. It was more than 150,000 people, across the bridge, plus more than 5 million watched it online. 1,450 sessions that took place over 4 days. World-class keynote speakers like yourself coming in to speak.
Fully conscious, no food poisoning.
Why are they all coming?
Yes.
What are they talking about? Why would, this is crazy, these numbers. And it's because no other conference gives them a vehicle to do that. So if these are the people who are making the change happen in the whole industry, and this is reality. This is not the future. This is the present moment. Here we are. This is 2014. This is not 1999, and we are in the mobile reality. We are in the social reality. As you know, you're on the board of a company. We are in the cloud reality. It's not just 35 billion in market cap. It is lots of really exciting companies.
Industry-wide change. So let's talk about the most exciting topic in the world right now, which is security. And at least I'll tell you my take. You can tell me if you agree with it. So my take is that for a long time, cloud and SaaS kind of fought an uphill battle on security under the theory that internal data centers were secure and that the cloud kind of by definition might not be because you had your data outside your own four walls. Starting 3 or 4 years ago, it seemed like that argument really started to pivot, where a lot of companies figured out that they really were getting comprehensively penetrated in their own data centers, and that in fact maybe it was going to be more secure to outsource to somebody like Salesforce, because Salesforce might have just a larger capability and sort of army of people and advanced technology and so forth to be able to deal with all the security threats. And so it felt, at least we heard from a lot of customers, like, okay, like I get it now, and probably to be more secure, I'm going to go to the cloud. Then the Snowden affair, the Snowden thing hit, and all of a sudden, sort of, for a lot of people, kind of stripped bare this kind of question of like, okay, the data's in the cloud, but like, what does that mean? Who has access to it? How many governments? And then, of course, the cyber warfare kind of topic keeps escalating even beyond that. So, do you agree with my take? And that presents new challenges, especially for multinationals.
There's a few different things all coming together in that, which you have to kind of tease out. So. At a high level on cybersecurity, there is no end game. So, there's no finish line when it comes to cybersecurity, and we are on a continuum. And that continuum started with the creation of things like DNS and TCP/IP and network access points, and the internet itself was never created to be a secure working environment. You understand the details because you're part of that group. And of course this is our mission critical infrastructure for our whole economy today. So there's no finish line on that, which means that we all have to double down and triple down and just keep working on that. I think at the second level, we also need to be focused on a vision of what could be Internet 2.0, a more secure internet with maybe a different set of protocols and a different configuration. And I've seen some very exciting work in companies, around the valley on that concept, because I think that we have the opportunity to create a more secure internet, but there is no end game on security. That is true for you, that is true for me, that is true for everyone in the audience, that is true for every CIO. It doesn't matter who you are, you're in that game. If you're working with computers, you're in that gambit. Number two, I don't think that Snowden and what happened with that whole set of things is an accelerator or deaccelerator on that. I think that the next step, though, when I travel around the world, is that countries all want their own cloud because they realize the cloud is really important. So, of course, the United States more or less has its own cloud, okay? And when we go to other countries, though, for a country like, we look at a country like Germany, which has a super high level of sensitivity around these issues. They want the German cloud, okay? They don't just want the German cloud, they want computers and network switches and technology built in German.
Right.
They want, when they unpack the box, to still smell, okay, the sweet mustard and the knockwurst that it was made with.
Right.
All right, and they should have it. They should have their own industry. They should have their own cloud. They should have their own telecom. The CEO of T-Mobile was here, with Deutsche Telekom. CEO of Deutsche Telekom came, was here for Dreamforce. They should have their own cloud. And Cameron should have the UK cloud, and Abe should have the Japan cloud. And every country, if they want their own cloud, they should have it. If they want their own tech industry, they should have it. It's, you could make that argument why that's important for their future of their economy. And
But all powered by Salesforce.
What's that?
All those clouds powered by Salesforce.
Well, we will certainly have those clouds. We're not going to be the only ones. That's the cool thing about this new world, is that everybody interoperates at some level.
Do you think there'll be more domestic competition for companies like yours in these countries as a consequence of this? Is this a big enough wedge?
Oh, I think that's empirical. I think if you look around the world and go through these different countries, you see that. And that's why we set up investment arms locally, like in Japan, where we've made a lot of really good investments, where we have our people, because there are really great companies in Japan at valuations that are much more attractive than what we're paid for here. Yeah. So, and that's more about the Japanese market and having a strong domestic solution in Japan.
Now, countries like Germany and Japan are, in a lot of ways, maybe more similar to the U.S. than different. You get to countries, potentially Russia or Brazil, as two examples, where arguably there's another thing going on, which is they would like more and more to have a more Chinese kind of ish approach to the internet overall. They'd like to have. So the consumer companies now that are setting up in these countries are finding these countries want, number one, they want the ability to do surveillance on their own citizens, and then number two, they want to make sure that they are truly firewalled from U.S. intelligence agencies, and then they also want the ability to do censorship. There's a lot of envy about the Chinese, the Great Firewall of China. So the consumer companies are all really trying to figure this out and coping with this, and there's some very difficult questions. Do you guys face that in those countries?
No.
Okay.
Because you have to remember a truth, which is that 90% of all enterprise software is only bought in 7 countries.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So what will that be in 10 years?
Probably about the same.
Really?
So this is one of the big mistakes a lot of entrepreneurs make, is they, and I know because I end up buying their companies, but
for a lot of money.
For a lot of money, and you end up getting the company, and then you'll look and say to like, why did you do this? And
you mean go into too many countries?
Go into too many countries, or set up buy something in another country, where it's like, for software entrepreneurs, they need to recognize that there are, for enterprise, certainly enterprise entrepreneurs, there are mega markets that need to be addressed, and before they go waste their time, or maybe they have some exotic trip, and then as soon as they get excited, all their employees start to waste their time in some location that is not going to buy any software from them.
Right. Interesting.
And so we end up having to undo a lot of things.
Yeah. Okay, so we're already running short on time, but I want to go a little bit long because I want to get to the other big topic, which is philanthropy and corporate responsibility. So I think everybody in the audience knows Marc is an individual philanthropist, and with his wife, a tremendous local philanthropist, including the...
As are you.
Well, yeah, but we're talking about you today. So I'm just going to keep shifting it back over. So Marc and his wife originally donated, I think, $100 million to create the UCSF Benioff Children's Hospital that I think just opened, which is a brand new state-of-the-art, brand new state-of-the-art children's hospital in San Francisco.
We turned the lights on, but we opened February 1.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
And then also, Marc and I have talked and argued about this a lot over the years. Salesforce, right out of the gate, set up the Salesforce
And we have
Foundation.
a second one in Oakland now, too.
Oh, fantastic. Good. Even better. So the Salesforce Foundation, from the very start, dedicated 1% of the company's profit, equity, and employee time to philanthropic causes.
Yep.
And this has become a little bit more fashionable now, but at the time, that was
it was much easier then because we had no equity, we had no employees, and we had no time. So.
Yes. That does help a fair amount in between your job at Oracle. So let's say
what I learned, because I was running the foundation at Oracle, and we would show up and do these work in these inner cities, and we were putting... You probably remember Net Day and these kind of things, and John Gage, and we'd be in these...
Wiring schools.
We'd be, we were in these inner cities, and we'd be wiring these schools and all this stuff, and wiring is much easier now with wireless.
Yeah.
So...
Right.
And Oracle employees would not show up to put the computers in the schools. They were busy closing deals.
Right.
And then that's when I realized, if you're going to do philanthropy right in your company, you've got to make it part of your culture. And the only way you're really going to make it part of your culture is day one, you got to say, okay, we're really in it to win it on philanthropy. So, when we started the company, March 8th, 1999, we had 3 goals. A radically new technology model, which we've kind of talked about, cloud computing. A radically new business model, which we also talked about, subscription. And a radically new philanthropy model, where we took 1% of our equity, 1% of our profit, and 1% of all of our employees' time and put it into a 501c3 public charity. Now, it turned out to be a good decision because we've now been able to give away $68 million in grants, 700,000 hours of community service. All of our employees, more than 90% of our employees volunteer. The first day of employment, the morning they do an orientation of the company, the afternoon they always go and do service work for the afternoon, just to let them know they're at a different company. And 3, we run over 23,000 nonprofits and NGOs for free on Salesforce, universities, et cetera. And that's been really gratifying and really fulfilling part of our business, is that we're not just running your portfolio companies, but we're also able to offer great services, the same services we offer to the General Electrics and the General Motors or the great companies. We offer right to the nonprofits. And Dreamforce, because that has become the largest nonprofit conference in the world. So more nonprofits go to Dreamforce than any other nonprofit conference in the world, because number one, they're all coming there to learn about technology, but there's just so many of them, they just aggregate in, and we don't charge them, to come. So it's like just this incredible thing, and it's become a great part of our company and our culture and our ability to give back. And so I really encourage you that, when you fund a new company, that you get them to put in the 111, right, because it's a great thing. And for the companies that have followed us, companies like Google, companies like Yelp, we have dozens and dozens of companies who've done 111 now. It's hugely successful for each and every one.
Right. So I was going to ask you, so if I'm a new founder and I come to you and I come to you for advice on this, do you recommend that I do the same thing that you did 15 years ago?
Absolutely.
Or have you learned things that you would do differently if you were starting from scratch?
Well, we certainly have appended our model, and of course we have a whole site called sharethemodel.org, but we had an interesting thing happen at some point. Some of the really big nonprofits like Red Cross, who've really gone to town with the technology, are like, okay, we have this free thing, but we want to pay for this, and we need these services, and here, we've got a lot of money, and take some of this. And we're like, we're not going to take your money, okay? But we're like, well, if we did have, if we actually charged this or that, and we did a little bit, maybe we had a highly discounted program, 90% off or whatever. So then we created a 501c4. So we created a 501c4, and it established commercial relationships with nonprofits who wanted to get to this really high level with us. And the 501c4 then receives that money, gives it to the 501c3 that then grants it back out. And so that's a really exciting extension to the model. It's very sophisticated in terms of getting people to understand how that works, but Salesforce has no commercial relationship with these nonprofits or NGOs, and any money that is basically, provided that they give to that 501c4 then gets granted back out.
Right. So you get to the final question. You get kind of 2 reactions when you talk to CEOs about this, I found. One is, that's a great idea, we should do that. The other reaction is, as a CEO, I have a fiduciary responsibility to my shareholders. I get this money, and I'm supposed to spend the money building the business.
Yeah.
And philanthropy is something that individuals should do.
Right.
And for companies to do it is, potentially a violation of fiduciary responsibility.
Yeah.
What do you say to them? How do you square the circle on that?
You kind of, Milton Friedman said the business of business is business, okay? Right. But you have to kind of decide, what kind of company are you going to be? Mm-hmm. Are you going to be a company all about your shareholders? Or are you going to be a company all about your stakeholders? Mm-hmm. Because in today's world, we have a lot of companies who are really only focused on their shareholders. Yep. And I think we only have to go look out our window to see what that's doing to our whole planet, mm-hmm. to our communities, to our education systems, to our safety net, mm-hmm. to our country. Mm-hmm. And we have a lot of companies that don't care about it, and that their employees are not engaged, with the communities that they serve and that they live in. And I think that, a good example is you have a lot of, great new portfolio companies, a lot of which are in San Francisco. And a lot of those kids you're hiring and, they're getting married and they're having kids and they want to send them into the K through 12 schools in San Francisco, and you want them to live in San Francisco, don't you, Mark? Well, they're kind of worried about that, actually. They're worried about housing. They're worried about the safety net at San Francisco. They're working about, they can't afford the private schools, They haven't had the IPO yet, and they're like, gee, what am I going to do? So, our ability to then focus on a social issue is really easy for Salesforce. Like, we have, in San Francisco, and we're like the only ones, it's crazy, we have put more than $10 million into the middle schools in San Francisco. We've been wiring these schools now for 2 decades, but we just rewired all these schools with all the wireless, all with iPads, and all this blended learning technology. We have our employees in there. We offer a full package. We give every principal in San Francisco for the last 2 years of the middle schools a $100,000 innovation grant, okay, that they can do anything they want with the $100,000 in their school. So that is exciting for us. Now, one, we get a lot of huge fulfillment, makes us happy because there's no greater joy you're going to get than giving. All that's great is you get the personal fulfillment. Number two, your employees are thrilled because they want to send their kids to these schools, and the schools are actually getting better. It's material. Like, they walk in and they can go, wow. Like, I've been in there and I'm like, this is as good as it gets, actually, in blended learning. And then three, the community at large is going to benefit. So, and does it really cost us, that much? Not really. I mean, we're on the margin here. And so I think it's extremely important. I think every company has to do it. I think every individual has to do it. I think our whole world is just kind of teetering a little bit. And our country and, education is a great example, K-12, where we all need to be working more on our K-12 systems. One of the reasons we really focused on it at Dreamforce this year, because it's something that we can all do. And technology, things that we're doing actually can impact those schools. Our employees can impact those schools by being in there. And when you can deliver a full package, and a full package is the money, of course, so they all need some cash, the technology, and the people. That is, our employees are in the schools, so they can volunteer in the school, and they're in art class, or they're in the tech program, or they're there mentoring, and that's key. And I learned all about that. In 1997, I went to this thing called the President's Summit for America's Future, which was the 5 living presidents. And I had never heard of any of this because I went to, I have an undergraduate business degree from USC. We don't talk about any of this stuff. It's not like we didn't have a great teacher like your wife, at Stanford teaching about social programs. Yeah. There was no social programs. So that was the first time I had ever heard about it. I go, this is a great idea. We have all these resources. At Oracle, we have the people, but I couldn't get the throughput. Right. But at Salesforce, we have the throughput. I mean, we can get things done. And when we focus on technology, of course, we're going to deliver a great product. We're going to have great customer relationships, but we're also going to make our communities better. And that's a key part of what we're doing. And I'm sure that at the end of the day, people may not remember Salesforce, okay? They may not even remember cloud computing, but they're going to definitely remember how we made our community better while we were here. Right. That's really important to us.
Good. Ladies and gentlemen, Marc Benioff.
Okay.
Marc, good job. Thank you.
Thanks.